episode 47 of our weekly CRICKETher Vodcast. We're going to start off by talking about a few bits of news that have come in this week. The first bit of news is that South Africa are going to be touring India, aren't they, Sid? Good news?
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for South Africa. They've just come out of their series against Pakistan. They did lose the last T20, but overall they won the series. And I think they'll be feeling reasonably confident. And it's a great opportunity for them to go to India and upset the books. And because India haven't played any cricket for the best part of a year now. South Africa have been playing well. And it's a fantastic chance for them to go and really stake a claim to be part of that top four in world cricket, which is where they want to be. So that'll be definitely one to look forward to for neutral fans to be watching.
Mm-hmm.
And in other news, it's been awards season in Australia. And this year's Belinda Clark Award, which goes to the leading international cricketer in Australia, has not gone to a Lanning or a Perry for the first time in a while, Raf.
Yes, it's the first time that Lanning or Perry or Healy haven't won it since 2013. And it's gone to Beth Mooney. So congratulations to her. Obviously, very well deserved. And she was player of the tournament in the T20 World Cup and obviously had a very good WBBL as well. So it's awarded for the preceding 12 months and she's definitely earned it. So well done to her. And
then the award season kind of continued with the inductees into Cricket Australia's Hall of Fame and Lisa Sthalekar becoming the fourth woman to be inducted into that Hall of Fame. She's been retired for 7 or so years now from international cricket. She did, of course, stay on a little bit longer in the domestic game and played the first couple of WBBLs.
She played the first WBBL.
But a point where we can reflect upon her career now, Raf, and see the impact of her as a player. How do we reflect upon that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously we mainly remember her for her excellent off-spin bowling, but I think it's important to remember that she was also an all-rounder and made significant contributions with the bat. And actually, I think that the image that we've got as our backdrop today, which comes courtesy of Don Miles, thanks Don, of womenscricket.net. So, she's actually batting in that backdrop. And I believe she was the first woman to hit the milestone which Sune Losers has recently added herself onto the list of 1,000 runs and 100 wickets in ODI cricket. So Lisa Sthalekar was the first woman to achieve that. So obviously she was partly in the Australian team for her batting, but yeah, an excellent career as a bowler particularly. And I suppose if we're thinking about her career overall, I guess one of the things was that she was playing very much in an era when the best players weren't necessarily particularly well known. If she was playing now, I think that she would kind of be getting a great deal more plaudits from the media than she did when she was actually playing. She retired after the 2013 World Cup in India. And Australia won that tournament and it was a very memorable tournament for them. But having said that, it really very much, I feel, kind of went under the radar as a tournament. I know there were people saying, my sister, for example, was in India at the time of that tournament and had no idea that it was happening. So it was very much a different era as far as women's cricket was concerned. Lisa was never able to play as a professional. Professional contracts didn't come in until after she retired. And so, I guess to that extent, even though it's relatively recent compared with some of the other greats of the game that we talk about, she was a pioneer in that sense, and it's important that we remember that. And fantastic that, as well as being added to the ICC Hall of Fame earlier in the year, she's now been added or I think it might have been last year, but she's now been added to the Cricket Australia Hall of Fame as well. So congratulations to her, it's brilliant. Obviously that kind of covers her playing career, but would it be fair to say, Sid, that some of her most significant achievements have come since she retired from cricket?
Yeah, I mean, she's helped break glass ceilings in the male-dominated world of commentary, commentating on both the men's game and the women's game. She's been involved with cricket's trade unions, so to speak, the Australian Cricketers Association, and with FICA as well, who we had on the Vodcast a couple of weeks ago. Interestingly, I think that actually her most significant achievement is one that hasn't been mentioned at all this week, perhaps for obvious reasons, and that is that she was responsible in a funny kind of way for the WBBL being introduced at the time it was and in the way it was. So Lisa Sthalekar was very involved in a project called the Women's International Cricket League, which was a proposal that never really came to anything. It was never much more than words. But it was a proposal for a sort of international tour of women's cricket to work a bit like the Women's Tennis Association World Tour, or a tennis or a golf world tour. So the idea was that you would create teams and that those teams would travel around the world as part of a sort of travelling circus, and that the elite players would be part of this, and it would give them a chance to, you know, be rewarded in the same sort of way that the men are with their, you know, IPL and Caribbean Premier League and all that sort of stuff. And when this proposal came out, which was from Lisa Sthalekar and her business partner Sean Martin, that was what really kick-started Cricket Australia into thinking, oh God, we've got to do something about this, and led to the WBBL being founded when it was. If it wasn't for that, then who knows what would have happened. It's obviously, at best, the WBBL gets, you know, brought in a couple of years later, but perhaps things go in a completely different direction. Perhaps the Cricket Australia ultimately decide to build on the T20 competition, the interstate T20 competition that was already happening, and we don't get a WBBL in the same way, you know. And then the WBBL is what leads to the Care Super League. The Care Super League comes along because the Australians are doing the WBBL, and then the ECB, Cricket England, the ECB are in this country going, oh my God, the Australians are doing this. We need to do something. We need to take an action. So, you know, she was kind of the butterfly that flapped her wings there. And had a really significant impact on the structure of women's cricket, which is going to be there forever now. And it would not necessarily have gone in that direction.
It's definitely true. There were some very worried administrators for a while, thinking that the rug was going to be pulled underneath them because the leading female players were going to become kind of independent agents managing their own careers without needing the support of the board to do that. That was the model on which this was based. It was meant to be that the players would be independently choosing to go off and play in this, and be earning quite a lot of money for doing so. And then the WBBL, as you say, came along and made it all official and above board in that sense. So yeah, very significant, absolutely. Now, we also had an email come in over the last week from one of our viewers, and it's really great to hear from one of our viewers. We welcome people getting in touch with us and giving us things to talk about and sharing your views. So I'm just going to read it out. It's from somebody called Henry Spence, and he says, "Hi guys, I'd be interested to hear your views on the selection policy and development of girls in the England system. It strikes me that England have relied upon pretty much the same batting lineup since 2017. A quick look at Wikipedia shows that the last ODI out-and-out batter selected by England was Lauren Winfield in 2013. Have we really not developed any standout batters in the last 8 years? Do you think England women are making the same mistake that England men did before Owen Morgan, etc., when they seem fixated on developing and selecting all-rounders rather than specialists?" But Sid, you've been looking into some of the numbers here about this idea that England haven't really been selecting new batters and they've got a bit of an ageing batting lineup.
Yeah, I think it's important to actually verify these numbers here. Sometimes you get an impression of something and it turns out not to be the case. But let's have a look at the numbers. Let's put them on the screen. As you can see, we're looking from 2013 when Lauren Winfield and I think Nat Siver made her debut in the same summer. Although Nat Siver, of course, made her debut really primarily as a bowler. And we'll see that, you know, for a few years, England's average age is hovering around 26, 27. And then since 2017, it's just gone up and up and up. It's gone up by about a year over a year, and it's hit 30 last year. Now, these numbers aren't 100% conclusive. You know, there's a little bit of sampling in there. What I've done here is I've sampled the first match of every summer, basically, and looked at England's top 6 in the first match of every summer. But you think the first match pretty much covers their first choice top 6 and their first choice 11. So I think that that's reasonable, and we can see that, yeah, that age has increased and we're now hitting 30, and that's got to be a little bit worrying if you're looking at the future of England, definitely.
Why is that a problem? Because what we're talking about is these are the best cricketers in the country in a way, and kind of the best batters. And isn't that just what happens when you have a professional system whereby you have an elite group of players who are training and able to devote more time to their abilities, to their cricket? Isn't that just what happens? Why is this particular problem, do you think?
Well, I think that there's one really obvious problem here, that what England are facing is the potential for a situation where all of their top six retire within the space of a couple of years, because they're all ageing at the same rate. That's what ageing does. That's how the maths works. That's how time works. It tends to go at the same rate for every person.
Thank you for that.
That's okay. Sometimes it takes a man to explain these things. Shall we cut that bit? No, let's not cut that bit. So England's batting lineup are ageing, so the worry is that everyone retires at pretty much the same time, and then England are faced with having to get together a whole new batting lineup in a very short space of time. So I'd like to see some younger people coming in there, and that's what's important, I think.
Yeah, we have been quite critical of the fact that, so for example, they have selected Sophia Dunkley over the last couple of years, haven't they? She has made her debut for England, kind of primarily as a batter, perhaps almost exclusively as a batter. I think she has bowled a little bit in international cricket, but I do think that she's very much seen as a batter rather than a bowler. So she has been brought in, but hasn't had an extended run in the side. And obviously, what you have to think about as a coach or as a captain is always balancing the here and now and success in the here and now with developing a kind of plan and a structure for the future, and what's the team going to look like in 5 or 6 years' time. And actually, what England, the current kind of England coach and manager, seem to be doing very much is that they are focusing on the here and now at the expense of the future. So if you look, for example, at that series that was played last summer against West Indies, ideal opportunity to bring in some younger batters and actually to debut them and have them play across the summer. And instead what you see is it's the usual suspects, plus Dunks gets one opportunity, or I think ultimately 2 opportunities in 5 matches, but one of those opportunities was a 5-over bish bash bosh, so it doesn't really count as far as I'm concerned. So 1 opportunity in that entire summer, which is actually really unfortunate. So do you feel like that's kind of problematic, Sid?
Yeah, I mean, that really was, in retrospect, a massive missed opportunity, I think. I mean, I said at the time, not entirely unseriously, that they should have chucked Alice Capsey in there. And in retrospect, there was a great opportunity there to throw in Alice Capsey for all 5 games and, see what she can do. She's obviously a very talented individual. She's obviously the future. There was the chance to do that. If the England selectors and management had been running the Indian team, we'd never have seen Smriti Mandhana. Smriti Mandhana would still be playing club cricket, going, "Oh, I'm not sure she's ready yet." She's only 23, and where would that have left? We would have been without a jewel of the game, and we're potentially denying opportunities to other jewels of the game. And it's easy to say in retrospect that England would have won that series anyway. I guess that probably England didn't realise quite how uncompetitive it was going to be, but I think they would have still won that series under those circumstances. So I think they need to be doing that.
And isn't the point is that it doesn't matter? It wouldn't have mattered if they'd lost the series, because who cares? In a way, I appreciate that that's actually quite difficult as an international cricketer, or maybe as a coach, an international coach, to get your head round. But isn't that the real issue in a way? Is that series was, basically meaningless in the context of, things like qualifying for the next World Cup, for example, or which often ODI series, you have to win your ODI series because it's about the qualification path for the next World Cup. Well, no, it was a completely standalone series. Nobody would have criticised England if they'd lost every match of that series. In fact, in a way, you throw in some younger players, it's a better series because it's more competitive and it's more compelling for viewers. So really what we're looking at here is a situation where actually people need to slightly change their mindset, I think, and not be so caught up with winning every match. Is actually to go, well, okay, let's look at this slightly differently, Lisa Kiteley, and think about, well, it doesn't matter, and then the ECB have to go, okay, well, we're employing you, and we don't mind if you lose. Now, it's a bit strange in a way to be saying that, but isn't that kind of what we need to try and solve this problem?
Well, we need to take a few more chances. I think that there needs to be a little bit of risk taking for the sake of the future. And again, I'm totally not suggesting that the six that have played are not the best people to be playing at the time. But I do think that we need to be giving a chance to our younger players. And right now that chance is only going to come at international level. It's true that the regional system, is going to help over the longer term. But last summer and next summer, it's still going to be the case that international cricket is really going to be what provides you with your solid foundation for genuinely competitive, hard-fought matches where winning and losing really matters. And this is where something like the Under-19 World Cup comes in, isn't it, Raf? You've got an opportunity in an Under-19 World Cup to play some genuinely competitive cricket, right?
Yeah, I think that's the real problem, isn't it? Is that at the moment, everything rests on those full internationals that England are playing, because there isn't the same level of kind of competitive structure underneath that. So what you end up with is, for example, an England Academy or some of these younger setups, national setups, where players are mainly playing intra-squad matches and they're just not as competitive. And so something like the Under-19 World Cup that the ICC was meant to be arranging has now been postponed. Goodness knows when or whether it will actually take place, given where we are with everything in the pandemic. But the idea behind it, I think, was to try and give cricket boards around the world an impetus to look at that next generation and actually really focus on putting the right structures in place for building up those players. Now, that's to some extent, does that solve England's problem? Because aren't some of our players not kind of 19 or under that we actually want to be maybe coming in and playing for England? Yeah,
you're right. It doesn't solve England's problem in the sort of short to medium term, but in the longer term, that's where you want to be looking, because ideally you want your team to consist of a 22-year-old, a 23-year-old, a 24-year-old, and then a 30 and a 31-year-old at the other end, kind of thing.
I do think it is partly about these. Was kind of making the point about these competitive opportunities, and what they do so well in Australia is actually some of the domestic matches just seem to be have that much more kind of competitive edge than some of the ones that we've got over here. And actually Matthew Mott is quite lucky because when players reach the full Australian national side, they've already got a load of really high quality competitive experience behind them. And it just seems like in England we don't necessarily have that to the same extent. Intra-squad matches aren't the same. I've been doing quite a lot of reading about the junior and the junior England and the young England setup that existed in England. So right from the kind of the late 1960s, there was a junior England side, and then there was a young England side that competed in the first World Cup in 1973, and those structures were in place. So young England was under 25s, and then junior England, the age limit kind of varied over time. But those teams were then going and playing in quite big series against quite big opponents. So for example, Rachel Hayhoe-Flint's first experience of international cricket, didn't count as full international, was going to the Netherlands in 1959 with a junior England side. And so she got that opportunity quite early on, and it just seems like they don't really have that anymore. That kind of junior England, young England setup just doesn't really exist now, and those matches therefore aren't happening in the same way, or that kind of level of competitive cricket isn't happening in the same way. So yet again, it's perhaps an example of, could we look to what happened in the Women's Cricket Association era? Could we replicate that somehow?
Yeah, well, it definitely remains a challenge, and it's going to be difficult for England in 3 or 4 years' time if they don't start addressing this now. If they don't start addressing it next summer, even though next summer's not the ideal opportunity, although next summer, of course, the same thing applies that you mentioned where those games don't actually matter in terms of World Cup qualification or anything. So that, again, there perhaps is an opportunity there that wouldn't be in a normal summer. If they don't start addressing it soon, you really are creating a huge problem for Lisa Keightley's successor potentially in 3 or 4 years' time.
Anyway, we'd be really keen if you've got any thoughts on anything that we've talked about today. Do get in touch with us. Comment on the CRICKETher post or comment on Twitter. Yeah, we're really keen to hear from you and read out some of your views in next week's Vodcast, perhaps. But for now, it's goodbye from us.